Hey guys, welcome to another episode. We are here in the attic. We're going to start calling this.
I call it the upper room.
And you will only get that if you're on YouTube watching. So there you go.
I guess it looks like an attic, huh?
It's the upper floor.
Yeah, we actually, for those of you we haven't talked about it, we record from Ken's office, from his Medicake agency office in downtown Franklin. And they are old house. What is this like?
Almost 1920s house.
Okay. So 100 years old house. And then at some point, it was converted from probably a very creepy attic to...
It was a very creepy attic.
So you knew it?
No,
You
for sure. We converted it.
Oh, okay. Great.
You're not creepy though.
No. But I mean, the ghost that lived up here was kind of creepy.
Yeah. Well, he comes out every so often. He's right behind you right
It's a she
now.
and it's a little girl.
Oh,
but yeah.
sorry. Jeez.
Well, guys, let's jump in because this is going down a road that I don't want to keep going on. Today we have a very, very special guest. Someone reached out to me back in August, complimented me/us on LinkedIn about the podcast, and then popped back up this week and said, "Hey, I'm really enjoying it. If you have any openings and you ever have guests, I'd love to." Took a look at her bio and her profile, and I said, we need to have Jody on. So today we have Jody Sutter, and I'm just looking at her website right now called the SutterCompany.com, and that's Sutter, Sutter. And I'll read you a little bit of her bio, and we'll jump right in because I think what Jody has to talk about today is so practical to most of our listeners. Before running business development teams at large agencies like RGA, OMD, and Havas, Jody spent over a decade in sales for a range of creative service firms, from branding design to digital advertising. She was on the front lines, generating leads and building relationships that led to new revenue. And so we will stop there and let her tell the rest of the story. Jody Sutter, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you very much. It is really great to be here. And I'm glad that it was, I think it's also, this is a real lesson in the value of spontaneity, because I think this came together in under 24 hours. So
yeah, we love that.
Yeah.
It goes with the agency exposed theme. So
shoot from the hip.
Shoot from the hip. This is what we do. Yeah. So thanks for joining us. I don't even know where you're calling from.
Yeah, I live in East Hampton, New York, which is on Eastern Long Island, the beautiful Hamptons. My Maserati is parked outside. I've got my staff working. I like to also joke that we live on the wrong side of the tracks in the Hamptons. There are real people who live out here. And of course, since the pandemic, since the beginning of March 2020, there are even more people who live out here. So, but it's a beautiful place to be. And this time of year, as things start to warm up and the daffodils are coming up, and it looks like winter is ending, and it's a great place to work from, and close enough to New York City that, in the before times and soon in the after times, I'll be heading back in there a lot as well. So
that's great. Well, you mentioned before times. I'd love to just hear from your own mouth a little bit about your own background and history in agency life. So can you just give us a rundown on that?
Sure. So I think that the common thread was business development, generating revenue. But I started out, not to get into too much detail, but I started out working for production companies way back in the day. So to sort of give you some sort of framework for date, it was back when there were 3/4-inch reels. So I was running around Manhattan as like a young 20-year-old with 3/4-inch reels, as many as I could stuff in my bag, going to Madison Avenue and selling the directors that I had represented. And what was great about that, as you noted in the bio, is that I learned really fast to get over any fear of talking to strangers and the volume that sales requires, and just getting out there. So I did that for a number of years. That sort of frontline sales that evolved into around like the late 90s. I was like, what's this internet thing? I decided I could either go to business school, or I could stick around and I could, rather than pay for business school, I could get a job at one of these new internet companies and learn there. And that's what I did. I worked for a company called iVillage. Do you guys remember iVillage?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What was fantastic about that is big companies like PepsiCo and HP were like, what is this internet thing? And so here was the small, scrappy sales team. It was one of the few times when a media organization is able to leapfrog the agency, and the client's like, yeah, why don't you guys come in here? We want to know more about how to advertise online. So did that, move to RGA. And that was going from like let's really much more straightforward sales into more consultative selling. We still didn't know what the heck we were doing. We're making up as we went along. We went from negative revenue to, it sounds quaint now, went from negative revenue to $12 million in revenue while I was there. 12 million now is like Bob Greenberg's car fare for the year. But there is sort of to really understand how to work within bigger organizations, consultative selling, longer term selling. And then I transitioned to more to bigger agencies. And what was so interesting about that is I was hired, my first big agency job, which was for the big global media company, OMD. They were attracted by my sales background, and yet that capability was rarely used. It was more, I thought about this, it was more like an event organizer, pulling together big teams, often across offices, often across countries, to pitch large value contracts. And I liked it. I sort of wished that there was more sales involved. So often it was more about like, well, the client wants us to do this, and so we got to jump. When the client says jump, we say how high. So I learned a lot that also then led me when I started my business, which was during the recession. And, like a lot of success stories, I think success stories start in that moment of crisis where, I lost my job. I built a great department, and they were like, thank you very much. We got to reduce some overhead. And I was like, well, what do I do now? So over the course of a few years, I moved out here to be with my life partner, Rudy. And I was like, I'm going to try to see what happens with starting this business and doing what I do. And one of the things I wanted to do is to be able to show agencies that what the client says isn't necessarily always right, that there's real value in challenging what they think and what they're trying to do, and how to, as I say on my website, is controlling an agency's business development destiny. I started out working for a lot of different types of agencies, went back to my network at large agencies. And then over time, I did an exercise that I do for my clients now. I analyzed, who do I serve best? Who's getting the most value? And I looked at it and I realized it was smaller agencies between, say, 5 and 55 people. And it was where the CEO was, and I used the CEO, founder, partner, where they were integrally involved in the growth of the agency, and they'd made that commitment that it was their job. So I worked really well with those kinds of people who knew that they needed to take more responsibility, but they didn't quite know where to start or how to grow. And so that's still who I tend to work with best and most are small agency founders, partners, owners, CEOs who are struggling when it comes to winning new business and want to make the process easier or customized to their own agency and their own situation. And they want to make it less chaotic for their team. And so that's what I do. And here I am today. Hopefully that wasn't too long.
Man, no, that's good. I mean, there was so much in there that, I think we all experience and we know well. So I'd love to kind of dig through some of what you just said, and get some takeaways. When you said consultative selling, and so can you talk a little bit about how your philosophy on sales and the results and maybe let's get into that. What are some practical things that people can do because I know everyone's trying to improve their sales and revenue, right? And that's, even if that's not the problem, I think most agencies think that is the problem anyway. And it's certainly a very, very important thing. So I don't know, maybe we can get into that first.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And as you were talking, I was thinking about like, where do I tackle this first? And about 5,000 different possibilities like came into my brain. So I'll try it. But so, I think for most agencies, even the smallest ones and even ones that have more transactional clients, I think for the most part, agencies are viewed as expert providers. And as experts, since what you're doing is primarily not that transactional, it's you're building these longer term relationships. So your clients expect that through a level of consultation. Or they expect, I don't know, maybe they don't expect it. Maybe they do, because we've trained as agencies, we tend to train our clients, like back to that. Yeah, you say jump, we'll ask how high. So I think it can be really refreshing for clients when an agency comes in with smart questions, with different ways of thinking about things. And I think it does a few things. One, it can often throw the clients off guard. So it's you get them out of there like, no, we don't need to talk to an agency. No. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, maybe let's talk to you. Mm-hmm. It also is, and it's amazing how often agencies don't realize this. I think it's a great, easy way to illustrate how your agency thinks. So I was just listening to your last episode on RFPs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm.
And, agencies think about, we got to put so much into this RFP. We got to do spec work and we got to do fancy stuff. When I think the client is really just trying to get a sense of how do you think, how are you going to tackle this problem? And you can do that in a 15-minute conversation. You could also do it not very efficiently in a 150-page RFP. So I think it's that 15-minute conversation. Sometimes that conversation also happens over the course of emails when you're trying to reach out and you're trying to get their attention. It's this idea of challenging their assumptions, offering how you've applied your experience to similar problems, and seeing if you can sort of marry that into a moment when the client says, yeah, this is something that I need to talk to you about now.
Mm. It seems like, that's really good because I don't know if you guys would agree, but there's over the years, it seems like there's a shift to giving away a lot of free consultation.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that it's, that you're not necessarily getting paid for. It's not necessarily the economics that I think is the problem, but I think it sets the relationship up for a very imbalanced relationship going forward.
One thing too, you mentioned, Jody, is that, a lot of agencies are, the clients asked to jump in the agency, you'll ask how high. Well, you start becoming a commodity business when you start to just jump when the client is dictating more of the strategy. And, it'd be interesting to hear a little bit of with that pushback as an agency, especially when it comes to new business, where's that point where you could kind of tick off a potential client because you're pushing too hard. Mm-hmm. And obviously they might have some things in their mind that they want to do. And that's why they're looking to hire with an RFP or right. a non-RFP. But I'd be interested to hear where that boundary line is.
I think the boundary line is not always distinct. In fact, it may more often than not be indistinct. So in a new business situation, let's take it there. First of all, one of the things that I think where it can be misinterpreted is let's challenge this client by telling them everything that they're doing wrong. I think that's one thing you actually want to avoid because,
that's not good.
What?
That's not good to do that.
That
works great in relationships too.
Sometimes you'll get that receptive chief marketing officer, that receptive head of digital strategy who's like, yeah, you're totally right. I've been preaching this to my boss. Come on in and see but more often than not, the first time a long time ago as a young salesperson, when I realized it's not the right strategy was when I got the email response that said something like, well, that was my brand platform that I developed and I'm actually quite proud of it. And I'm like, oh yeah, not so good. So yeah, you don't want to,
you don't tell them their website sucks.
Yeah, that's probably not a great idea. But the other thing that, a lot of things that the agencies then sometimes will sink into a lot of hours of research and trying to, and again, mistake I made when I was doing this for agencies. Like I don't want to reach out until I really have a hook, until I really have like that big idea, which is almost impossible. And I think what we neglect to do is we neglect to say, okay, I'm calling on this. I have this set of 25 ideal prospects, and they're ideal because I've got a roster of half a dozen other clients who maybe are in different categories, but they're similar in some kind of way. I've solved a similar problem, and I can make an intelligent assumption that these prospects have the same kind of problem. And I can back that assumption up by saying, hey, look, there's client ABC, and this is the type of difference we made for them. Is it possible, prospective client, that you need that kind of improvement, that you need that kind of innovation? Sometimes they'll say no, and sometimes they'll say, yeah, this is really interesting. So there you have a very tailored pitch that's based on your experience and enough research about the prospective client without doing a lot of spec work.
That's good.
I mean, something that you're doing there as well is you're leveraging the experience you have over, but not necessarily even on the one hand, it's to help convince somebody. On the other hand, it's more efficient in how you execute things, right? So like, I think something we talk about it a lot here is, be repeatable, because you get better and better at it, and you're able to do it more efficiently. And that's one way to drive profit too. And agencies, I in my perspective, sometimes tend to be, they're like schizophrenic in a way. Like they'll do a lot with this person, a lot with this person, a lot with this person. They're rebuilding the wheel every time. Yeah. And so finding ways to, take learnings, leverage them, get really good at them, repeat them. I think that's one way to drive profit.
When you're pitching a client, let's say, and clients always like to see work within their lane. Sometimes when you show them results from a different industry, they may not relate to it, or they think they may not know that actually could relate to their industry. What are some ways, like if you're looking to get a new client that is maybe worked in an industry that you haven't lived in that long, what are some ways that you can leapfrog into that new industry and prove to that potential client that you can?
So I think one of the best ways, one of the best ways to do that is to become a very good storyteller. And if you are, there are ways that you can take a case for, say, a personal care product and position it for let's do something really wild, for, automotive QSR. I mean, that's like, okay, that's probably a hard connection to make. But if you can find that point of similarity, so maybe that, maybe it's the same target audience, women in their 40s who are like worried about wrinkles in terms of that personal care product, but also have also gotten to a point where they've gotten enough money where they can buy that sports car when it comes to automotive. So you can unite those two by saying, look, we really understand this customer that we feel is going to be crucial for you to meet your sales goals of selling this new sports car. So that's one way, but you have to make it clear to the client where that connection point is. You have to lead them. And sometimes, especially in written responses, there's this tendency just to sort of dump the case study on the client and hope that they figure it out. Right, yeah. You have to be like, here's why we're showing it to you. Here's what we want you to pay attention to. You have to lead them that way. I think also, another thing about that too, so we're talking specifically leaping categories. This also may be an area, I'm going to go back again to your RFP episode, where if you get invited to a competitive RFP, this may be a situation where you say, we're up against 5,000 agencies and we probably have no chance, but let's use this as a marketing opportunity. So we're going to see this as a way to get our name familiar with this client, knowing that the chance of getting this is probably very low, but then we'll use this it will be the foundation to build this relationship over time. So you use it as a springboard.
Jody, that's an interesting point. I don't mean to cut you off, but I'd love for you to dig into that a little bit, because you're sort of saying like use something like your 1 in a million applicants to plant a seed. Strategically, how you do that? What are some ways to do that?
Yeah, well, I think one of it, I think you even just said it, you got to be strategic in your response. So that's the other thing too, just in general with RFP responses. I think that agencies don't take enough time, and there's not often a lot of time, but that 5 or 15 minutes with your leadership team to say, why are we going after this? What is going to be most appealing about our capabilities? What does the client need? And how do we sort of marry that together in those like 2 or 3 themes? Like what do we need to get across to the client? So, to go back to I've already lost track of your question.
No, I mean, I think the idea of making the most of your opportunity is kind of what I'm getting at. So if you don't think you can win it, or you don't think it's worth your time to, put in 50 hours to try and win it, How can you make the most out of that? And I think the idea that you mentioned is really interesting. Like, hey, it might be the beginning of a longer relationship. So you could invest just a little bit of time and plant a seed that then you can develop over time. That's kind of really interesting to me.
Yeah, I think you can, here's also sort of a form of challenging the client. One thing might be, this is a bit of a bit nervy, but one thing might be to submit a 3-page summary that says, we don't think we have that much of a chance of getting this, but we'd really like to work with you. Here's what, if you want to choose us, here's what you have to know about us. We'd love to tell you more, but we'd love even better to continue the conversation with you after you've concluded this RFP process.
I love that.
And then you, of course, follow up.
I love that. That saves
I've never tried it, so I don't know if it works, but if you do try it, let me know.
That saves you 147 pages of writing.
Yeah.
That's a rebel.
I'd like to zoom out just a little bit because one of the things, as we were talking before the podcast of questions, one of the things that I have experienced through the years of agency life and working with other agencies, for other agencies, owning my own agency is there is, some people call it a predictable growth model. Some people call it, different hurdles of revenue. And you see, your goal is that first million, and then you're like, oh, this was easy. And then you skate past 2, but then you get stuck at that 3 to 5. You can't ever get over that. Can you talk about that? And I'm sure you've seen, and there's probably some rule of thumb. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, in some ways, I'm not sure if I am actually the best person to talk about. I think you're also getting into, as you said, growth planning and
business process.
But when it comes to business development, I think what you're also saying is I don't want to say easy. That's a little bit misleading, but for want of a better term, it's
for Bob, it was easy. I mean, for the rest of us, we're trying to figure it
out. But it's easier to find smaller clients who really have a need. And then you got to make that leap from even sort of the $500,000 to $1 million in billings client to there's very little in between. So how do you do that? Let's see if I've got the perfect solution to that problem.
We're talking about scaling sales, right? Is what we're talking about.
Okay. So because I think there are 2 things. One is how do you get that from that leap to the types of clients that spend a lot more? And I think that's so dependent on agencies and your offer and the market that you're in. But in terms of scaling sales, that's definitely something that I could talk about. So you talked about reinventing the wheel. I think agencies reinvent the wheel because they are uncertain about the value that they offer, their value proposition, and their positioning. And so I think it really rolls back to what do you do, who do you serve, and what kind of difference do you make for them? And when you feel confident about that, and that of course that'll change over time, especially when you get to those points where you're leaping from 3 million to say 5 million. So you have to always look at how it's evolving. But if you're clear on that, then your materials are going to be clear about that. The materials are going to support that value proposition. It becomes your North Star, the decision that you make about anything you're going to include or develop in your materials, the case studies that you're going to write, the perspective you're going to write them from, the thought leadership you're going to produce. So then once those standards are in place, that's when scalability comes into play, when it becomes more efficient to build up that thought leadership program because you have the strategy, you know who you're trying to reach, you know the key messages that you're trying to communicate, the issues that you're helping to address. So I think that's when scaling happens. Same thing also about identifying clients and building your database and having those scripts. That's when you can do things like, I think for a lot of small agencies, you can get to a point where you can start to outsource lead generation. There's a lot of times when that doesn't work, but if you're really clear on your value proposition, outsourcing lead generation can be a great alternative to hiring someone in-house to do that outbound stuff. But I think it starts from a strong framework.
That's good.
We talk a lot about on this podcast that, you can only be 3 things in business. You can be the cheapest, the best, or the only. Most agencies they're trying to be the best, right? They're in there trying to pitch to potential clients. We're the best. Here's why. And, how do you become the only in this business where you come in and you have a silver bullet that no one else has?
maybe silver bullet's the wrong word, but you're so you have a unique position that's hopefully maybe as different as possible than everybody
maybe
else.
It's a unique proprietary approach or intellectual property or technology or something.
Well, one thing, I'm going to borrow something that one of someone local to you guys, David C. Baker, he's another great person to have on your podcast, by the way. But he says that and he does a lot of work around positioning for agencies, but one of the things he said is that you should have a positioning where we make a claim that at the most only 200 other agencies could make the claim. And it's like 200. That's not, it takes the pressure off unique, right? Because I think you can get so narrow. It's sort of like the power of one thing where you get so narrow that there's no market anymore. And so this idea that 200 agencies competing with, I can handle that. That's what the agency owner might be saying. Then I think it comes down to a certain amount of confidence and courage to say, we're going to make this commitment to this thing that we're good at. And that also sends a signal to your team that it's okay to do that. And then you have to do the hard work of saying, what is that thing? And is it a proprietary technology? Is it a point that you serve where you serve a client especially well in the purchase funnel? Is it a market? Is it a category? So I think there are actually more options than a lot of agencies realize for defining that point of difference. But I think also for someone like me, can be really helpful is to go in, take a look at the landscape, have this I call it this sort of expert objectivity. So I have the benefit of all my years and all the agencies I've worked with, and yet I'm still objective and I'm seeing that they're not something that they're not seeing anymore, or maybe never have. And help them sort of see the choices that they can make around what makes them different.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about specializing down. And and you're right. I think a lot of agencies fall into the category of trying to be everything to everyone, and maybe it's that word full service or something that that's come with this idea that we basically do everything, we don't turn down anything, and it's probably from a sort of a little bit of a scarcity mentality. Like there's I can't give this to someone else because if someone else does it, then they'll steal my client. But I don't know if you guys think, or in Jody, that used to be the case, like where you had to do everything or you would lose the client. But these days, it seems like, and Jody, I love your perspective, that specialization is not only okay, but it's definitely like the way to get to what you're talking about, scalability, more profitability, all those kind of things.
Yeah, there's so much there. I think agencies, and look, our business is cyclical. So, we go through periods where agencies want to bundle everything, clients want to bundle everything in one agency or one holding company. And then you go back into the part of the cycle where they want to unbundle things. And I think we're now we're in a little moment for independent agencies when the bigger agencies, holding company agencies, I think they had a harder time during the pandemic than some of the smaller independent agencies who could pivot faster. I also think clients because they are under so much pressure to perform, they are more willing to hire agencies that are specialists in order to fill a gap and take a chance on, a WPP agency on like BBDO. I also think that with in-house agencies as well, now that agencies are competing with in-house agencies, and yet in-house agencies are more willing to hire a specialist, again, to cover off on gaps that they don't have internally. And from sort of a sales marketing perspective, we're so overwhelmed by information in this world. Clients need a hook. They need a way to remember you. There's a quick anecdote. There's a search consultant, Matt Ryan, who has a business called Roth Ryan Hayes, and he works mostly with bigger clients, bigger agencies. But he did a podcast with the 4As, or webinar with the 4As a few years ago, and he said something that was so illustrative. He said that when he works with his clients, and he pulls together agencies for a competitive pitch, he will send out the RFI to the agencies that he wants to include. And one of the questions is, it's something like, what is your agency known for? It's probably, it's something that forces the agency to differentiate. Yeah. And for agencies who don't differentiate, it's going to be much harder for that client to remember. And they could be the best qualified, but if they don't make the commitment, if they don't draw the line in the sand that says, here's what we're known for, then they're probably going to be disqualified. So I think that's also a great illustration where this sense of, I've got to do whatever I can because this is revenue and I can't lose it. I got to be all things to all people, where it does hurt you. And it's, real situation. We know it happens because Matt tells us that it does part of his process, and he works with some of the biggest brands and agencies in the world.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest turning points for us was years ago when we decided to specialize into e-commerce specifically, at least from the outside perspective. And that was back 2015 or something like that. But it aligned everything. You're able to start creating better value propositions. You really understand why it exists. You understand what your superpower is. You understand all these different things. You can communicate with those people. You're laser focused on your customers, and everything gets easier. And it's easier to close too, and you're more effective. I mean, all those things really work. The question is, and I love the David Baker thing. We do have to have him on sometime. That where that idea that you want to specialize to the point where there's about 200 other companies like you, that kind of gives you a level. So you don't go, how far to go down approximately, right? Like you don't have to go down to where you're the only person serving the super niche audience that's really small, but also, and so I like that as a meter to say, okay, how far down should we specialize?
I would say too that, I work in a full service agency, and we're really good at what we do in almost all services. The only thing we don't do is PR. But that would seem counterintuitive and contradictory to what we were just talking about. However, I think you can also focus in on the client side versus the services side. So it's not just, hey, don't be a full service agency, but find who what your focus and target is, and it might be service related, i.e., we just do e-commerce, or it might be we only work with these 3 or 4 different types of verticals, or this one vertical, whatever it may be, and you can still be a full service. But the point is, find something to differentiate yourself and find something to specialize in that that you can niche down and to say. So for us, we focus on nonprofits, sports and entertainment, and healthcare. Those are we're really good at those things. Now, will we take other business? Sure. But we can talk a lot about some very specific case studies that then narrows us down into a group of agencies where we can be the best in those group of agencies, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really important. And, we were talking about value proposition, right? And once you specialize, it's really hard to create a value proposition and say forget Jody, what you said there, but what you're really good at, what you're known for. If you don't specialize in some way, and I don't know if you would agree, Jody, because you work with tons of agencies, but creating a value proposition for a service like an agency can be really hard. And I think most people don't do it because it's really hard. And I know I've got my ways of chewing on it, but I mean, how do you get people to a value proposition when,
It's actually one of the things that I do when I first start to work with an agency. We kick off our engagement with a workshop. It's a 2-day workshop, 2 half days these days. And the end product of day one is an elevator pitch. And I also use the term elevator pitch strategically because it is so tactical, and value proposition does sound like, oh my gosh, we're never going to do this. We've been trying to do this for years. We kick this around all the time. It never works. An elevator pitch it sounds a little bit more like it's less conceptual. Mm-hmm. You can debate whether that's true or not, but it feels less conceptual.
Right.
An elevator pitch has certain components. And what I do is I walk my clients through exercises that, unbeknownst to them, we're defining what those components are. And so by the time we get to the elevator pitch, we know what the parts are. So it's sort of like putting silverware in the right parts of the drawer, right? You're not going to put a knife in the spoon area. You're going to put, so like the knives go here and the spoons go there. And if they're all there together, okay, that makes sense. Mm. I'm probably making it sound easier than it is, because then everyone sees it and they're like, oh, this is great. But now let's make it a little more broader. Let's do this. And then they mess it all up again. So that's when I have to like corral them back. But I think when you can look at the core components that go into the elevator pitch and sort of like unbundle them, figure those out first, and then put it in that format. The other thing you're also saying too about, Bob, I think you were saying like but you'll work with other clients that go outside of that elevator pitch or that value proposition. I think that's a really important thing too. Sometimes they'll say, look, let's take this value proposition. Let's only use it for our proactive outreach. Right. So this is going to help you narrow down your precious time and how you're going to use that the best for the right clients. And then your reactive stuff, the stuff that comes over the transom, continue to look at everything. Be smart about what you choose. Right. But doesn't necessarily mean that you're eliminating that many options.
Yeah, because for instance, for you, everybody needs e-commerce.
Well, I mean, the truth is that is the truth, and now these days it's even more the truth. But to Jody's point, you don't have to be so rigid with it,
right?
And you said it really well. You use it from a proactive standpoint, and you don't necessarily have to use it from a reactive standpoint. Yeah. And I think that for us, like we all know that the skills that we do in some area are applicable in another area, and so it's not like you have to turn those away just because you're for no reason if you can actually help there. Right. And so for us, we do the same thing. I mean, I'm really curious, Jody. I don't know if you can rattle them off, but what are some of the core components in that elevator pitch?
Yeah, it's. I hope I haven't built it up too much, because you're like, really, that's it?
No. I mean, simple is better, right?
Yeah. So there are three key ones. One is your differentiator. So big duh, right? We've been talking about that. And that's often what's the hardest thing. What is the key differentiator? Actually, let's go back another one. There are four. One is your identifier. That's something also another place where agencies trip up. Are we an agency? And I think agencies are getting better, but we went through a period of time where we were brand storytellers, we were innovation agents, So,
by the way, I'm sorry to, I think that that is such an important one that gets overlooked, because I think most agencies aren't agencies. I mean, we're actually not an agency technically in the way it's defined traditionally. We call ourselves an unagency in some ways, but but you're right. You have to define what are we? Don't just call yourself something because it sounds cool or because you get lumped into that. That's the way
it's always done.
Right. Yeah. It's always done that way.
Right. And again, you have to look at okay, this is our elevator pitch. This is the kind of thing. This is the thing that we say to the person when they pick up the phone, or we are handing our card, which we will do again one day, to someone at a networking event. And it's also, it's not necessarily going to be the headline in every piece of content we produce, but it's going to inform it. So identifier, differentiator. So a lot of times agencies will really struggle with that. And that's also where I can help bring bubble up the stuff that's really important. Client insights. That's often where agencies excel. And it becomes so easy when I switch things from saying, let's forget about what makes you different. What do you know about your clients? And often we'll pick a category. So Bob, in the case of your agency, if I was working with you, it's let's pick sports and entertainment. Tell me, I don't know, usually I pick 20 because it's a good list and it works for the time that's allotted. Give me 20 things you know that your agency struggle with in sports and entertainment. And it's sort of, it's a free thinking type of exercise. And that's really what comes back from that becomes, it's the underpinnings of your value. Because what you understand about those clients is why they come to you, because it's going to reduce the risk of hiring an agency that doesn't know those clients. It means that they have less ramp up time to teach you what marketing for sports and entertainment, for the sports and entertainment business is all about. So that's another thing, the client insights. And then the fourth key thing is the motivators, the client motivators. And I try to direct my clients to look at these motivators beyond simply growing their own business, or increasing profit, because often it gets down to the personal level. That person wants. Well, if you look, I often refer to the Bain B2B pyramid. I don't know if you've ever seen that At the very top, just like sort of the Maslow hierarchy, the very top is personal fulfillment. So maybe that seems lofty, but and at the very bottom are things like saving money, innovation is actually like the second to last level. So if you can promise a client personal fulfillment and glory in the afterlife, you'll probably get the business.
Right.
Taller, I know.
That's called a mega church.
We always promise that.
That's Brad's proposition.
Yeah, that's my. We always promise that.
And somewhere in between often becomes like furthering their career, doing good, having a purpose. It's got to be authentic. You can't sort of just pay lip service. But that once you start to understand that there are more motivations behind just getting their job done, then your story becomes richer. And it's so much more client focused too.
I'm sorry, I keep jumping in, but you're speaking my language. It's interesting. Like, you realize, and for me, it took a little while to realize this, when like there are people behind the businesses.
Right.
And they've got their own personal, psychological, emotional motivations that need to be fulfilled. And really, like, fulfilling those is the goal, right? Like there's a group of people and you have to fulfill them for a lot of different people, but that's kind of the secret.
Well, I think we are in an era, and I'd love to kind of go down this rabbit trail a little bit because it's my passion, is, people like Simon Sinek or Brene Brown have really helped us to peel back and say, we need to be vulnerable. We need to acknowledge that, like Ken said, there are people on the other end of that phone or that Zoom that are dealing with their own shame and their own, whatever it may be, their own stuff.
Yeah.
And we've got to be willing to be empathetic and vulnerable ourselves as salespeople so that we can build that human connection, which builds trust, and not in a manipulative way, but in a truly authentic way. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I think that is such a missing piece historically in the sales process, that when I sit down with someone and I look at them in the eye, or, try to do the best I can over technology these days, the more that you can bring in that human to quell and to remove that anxiety, that built-in distrust, whatever might be on the table in this sales process, there's already a barrier. Like, I'm trying to convince you, I'm trying to keep as much of my money as I can, but I want to try to get as much free stuff from you. There's just like this adversarial thing that is either conscious or unconscious that enters into that discussion from square one. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Again, so much there. Where do I start? One of the things that I say, and it's something that I'm still mastering. I have to give myself my own pep talks about how, like, just be human. But so one of the techniques that I use and I recommend people use if they've decided that things like outreach, personal outreach is the best way for them to generate revenue, or one of the ways they want to do that, is when you're making that warm call or sending that email, is to think of that person less than, they're not this almighty perfect client. Perfect client. They are another human being. And don't think of them so much as a best friend, but it's more like, what would be the conversation you might have with your neighbor's cousin, or your aunt's new boyfriend? So someone you're familiar enough, and yet you don't know each other that well. But there's also a certain level. There's also like the sense of like, you're okay because you're already part of my world. So then it becomes, well, how do I make a part of my world? How do I, I'm not part of their world. And that's where your positioning comes in.
It's also your identity that comes in too. I mean, you have to believe that you're part of their world, or if you are,
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. So then automatically it's like, hey, look, if this is the wrong time for a call, no big deal. But you're not telling them this. This is your internal speech. Like, I know we could be useful to you because we've been useful to dozens of other people just like you. And if it's not the right time, or for whatever reason, that's cool. We're going on to the next one. That also helps with that sense of humanity, and you feel a little bit more relaxed about making those calls. But it can be a big leap because we've so conditioned ourselves to think like the client is always right, and we're up against so many people, and we've got to be all things to all people. It's a tough mindset to change.
Yeah, for sure.
we always talk about being empathetic to the end customer. When we work with our clients, we try to teach them to really understand their customers' pain points and really address those things. And so it's similar when we're pitching as well. We have to understand our clients' pain points and understand that, the humanity in it as well, that they're people. So it's sometimes not just understanding the client's company pain points, but actually a person that we're dealing with. We sit and chat about struggles that they're having and try to get more of a relationship built in that way versus trying to solve their bigger picture. One of the things that I'd love to hear from you on is I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've seen the shift from Madison Avenue to Silicon Valley in this industry, and how Silicon Valley now is leading the charge of what a lot of agencies are involved in. And I'm curious from your perspective, because you, like you said, you used to run around with 3/4 inch film and reels in Madison Avenue. I'm curious to hear from you what the future looks like in our agency world, like what the next 5 years looks like with technology, AI, and things that we used to sell have now become just a commodity. Interested in your perspective on that.
Oh, wow. No pressure or anything. What does the next 5 years look like in our world? I still think, so it's going to be, I think, again, one of the benefits about being in this business for a long time is you do start to recognize patterns. So I think that strategy and good ideas are going to be important for a good long while. And those usually come from human beings, often collaborating with other human beings, whether it's that agency team or the client. So I think that'll always be important. But other things, I think the in-house agency is going to continue to be important. And so then it becomes, what is that ecosystem being built around that agency? And so maybe the independent agencies will stay on the forefront for the next few years. What else do I think is going to happen? Like with that technology that allows you, like I think CRM is huge, and Ken, you probably know a lot about that. But I think a lot of the sort of more traditional full service are still trying to figure out what the CRM. That'd be an interesting thing for me.
If you ever need help, let me know.
But this idea of like everyone talks about the customer journey and the 360-degree view of the customer. I still think agencies are figuring that out. They're still investing in the tools, and it must be quite challenging because a lot of those tools are very expensive as well, right? That also may be where we see even more sort of micro specialization. So if you know that you're an agency that really wants to focus on strategy, you may not be investing in a lot of those very expensive technology and tools. So maybe you're going to partner with another agency who's really focused on research and analytics, who has decided that they can charge a shitload of money for their services in order to pay for those tools that they're buying. So maybe you'll find even more fragmentation. Of course, the cycle will come back around, and then like the next Smart and Sorrel, we'll buy them all, and we'll have a whole new set of big holding companies. That's the next 5 to 10 years, I suppose. But yeah,
that's really good. That at least aligns with some of our thinking. So, good job. We crawl. Yeah.
Where can people find out more if they want to go deeper, they want to hire you, or they just want to read your blogs? Because I know. Yeah, go ahead.
So the two good places for that. One would be my website, which is thesuttercompany.com. And it's Sutter like the wine company, thesuttercompany.com. You can go to the Start Here page and also schedule a 45-minute complimentary consultation. If you'd like to hear about what I do and I could work with you, awesome. If you just want to, run some ideas by me, that's okay too. And also I'm on LinkedIn. So everything I published on my blog, I also publish on LinkedIn. And
do you do any social media? Can people follow you anywhere?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm right now I'm agonizing about, and please follow me on Twitter. I could use more Twitter followers. I'm agonizing about whether I should even keep that. I guess that's another thing. Again, something for me to ask you guys probably. So LinkedIn and Twitter, but LinkedIn especially, that's my primary social channel.
Awesome. I just want to say that everyone, I really enjoyed the conversation, Jody. You clearly have a lot of expertise, and it is so valuable when you're doing anything. So any business that you have, even any life initiative that you have, to get someone from the outside that has experience and can help lead and help guide you, you save so much time and so many mistakes. And so I would encourage anyone, any small agency, big agency owner, leader out there to, if you don't get in touch with Jody, get in touch with somebody that you can kind of bounce ideas off of that can reflect back on you and actually can help you lead, because it will save you so much time and energy. And so I really appreciate people like Jody that are willing to share that expertise, because not many people are. That's actually part of the reason why this podcast exists.
Yeah. I think objectivity is fertilizing for your agency's subjectivity. It could kill it.
Yep.
Man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great. I might borrow that.
Well, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day, and we really appreciate it. And I know that probably we'll want to have you on again, because I think we want to go deeper. I think we want to go deeper on this, because there's a lot of wisdom you can share with us for sure.
Yeah, let's break down one of our value propositions or something.
Next time we're going to bring on.
That'd be fun. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
Well, let's do it.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Till next time, Jody. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jay.
See you, Jody.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.